What is the number one cause of autoimmune? Isn't that the million-dollar question? I've gotten asked that, I don't know, a bunch of times, but it's interesting because when you have a chronic illness, one of the first things people say is, oh, have you changed your diet? And yes, diet is important. Exercise is important, all these things. But in my experience, I've spoken to, I don't know, a ton of people, at this point, probably thousands of people, about their, health conditions. And when I really dive into it and we peel back the layers of what is going on, usually there's some kind of event that triggers the onset of the first symptoms of a chronic health condition. And when I'm talking with people, we start talking about what was going on in their life at the time. And really, I would say at least 80% of people, but I would even maybe say go as far as 90%. And maybe that's just because that's the type of people that follow my page. I'm not sure, maybe why it's such a high percentage. But I don't think so, because I'm also in some of the chronic health Facebook communities, and I've poked around and asked questions in there. And there's a very common denominator. Like I said, I would go as far as saying 80 to 90% of people, at the time that their health condition was triggered, they were in a period of high stress. And not just any stress, because when we continue to peel back the layer, because there's a lot of different kinds of stress. There's stress from, having expectations at your job that you really are unrealistic. There's, physical stress, maybe your body's been under too much physical stress, maybe drinking too much or not getting enough sleep or getting in a car accident. You have some kind of physical trauma or digestive issues, and, maybe something's messing up your stomach. But those aren't really the ones that I seem to find are the worst. The one that seems to be the most dominant, like I said, at least 80% of people at the time the onset of their symptoms happens, is emotional stress caused by a relationship in their life. That could be their sister, more often their spouse, their kid, their mother, their boss. It's someone in their life that is an important relationship that is causing them daily stress. So I find that very interesting, and I don't think it's talked about enough. And I think part of that reason is because, you can measure the amount of carbohydrates you're eating a day. You can measure the amount of calories. You can measure the amount of exercise you did, how many reps you did at the gym, how many hours you spent in therapy each week. But how do you measure the level of stress you have in your relationship? How do you, spend 1 hour a day working on your emotional stress and working on your emotional health? There's meditation and stuff like that. I guess you can say, oh, I meditated for 20 minutes, but how do you measure your improvement? How do you see how well it's working? What's the goal? It's so not tangible. Intangible, is that the word? So it's so hard to quantify and qualify. So I think that's why it's so hard to manage. And it's never simple, ever. Sometimes, I've talked about removing triggers of inflammation from your life, but sometimes these people, you can't exactly remove them. Or if you remove them, maybe it's a client, or maybe it is your spouse. And if you remove them, then all of a sudden you have financial stress. It's you have these other triggers of stress. So it's complicated. And also it's even when they can cause a lot of emotional stress, they can also cause so much joy and love and happiness too. So it's if you remove them, then you remove a lot of good in your life too. So it's just very complicated. And it's not, I think that when someone has an autoimmune or some other kind of chronic health condition, that's hard on any relationship. And all of our friends and the family and the people that love us have an opinion, or we think we have these things we should or shouldn't do, to fit into social norms or to fit into our code of ethics. And when you have a health condition, things get very complicated, and they're not, sometimes we put up with things that we swore we would never put up with. And sometimes we do things and say things that we never thought, we don't even recognize ourselves in the mirror. But understanding and learning the skill of managing your emotions in relationships is not only necessary to minimize your symptoms that you already have. It's necessary for healing. The lower your inflammation, I'm not saying anything you don't already know. The less inflammation you have, the better you're gonna feel. The easier it is to get in remission. And I'm telling you, these emotions we have cause more inflammation in most people than that cookie or that piece of bread or that cup of milk in most people. And sometimes if we can manage our emotional stress, then we're not triggered so much by what we eat or drink or, that type of thing. But it's hard, but it can be learned. And I think a lot of managing your emotional stress comes with understanding. And when I say understanding, it's understanding the intentions and the emotional goals of these people in our lives, but also learning how to express ourselves in alignment with our emotional goals. Because in my experience in my own life, and because we teach what we want to learn, right? So I study this stuff because I want to learn it too. But I think where things get even more inflammatory and complicated when it comes to our emotional stress and our emotional inflammation is when we in our communication with the people that we care about most, because the more you care about the person, the more inflamed you can get. I don't think I have to explain the science behind that. You guys have experienced it. But what happens when things get bad is we attach ourselves to circumstances, things people say, things people do. We find evidence to support a belief we have. And we start getting attached to these things instead of focusing on shifting our attention to the emotional goals of the person we're talking to. Okay, I was talking to my friend, my old neighbor, Gusty, who's a good friend of mine the other day, and he's just like, something that's helped me more than anything with girls? Like what? He's like, understanding that if they're making a big deal about a little thing, it's not the little thing they're actually really mad about. He's like, it's something else. So if they're getting mad about this little stuff, he's like, instinctively you want to be like, that's not even a big deal. Like, you're making a huge deal out of this. And it blows your mind. And sure, if you keep your tunnel vision onto that one little thing, it is a little bit obnoxious. But when you can understand that there's something bigger at work, when people start making big deals out of nothing, when they start making big deals out of these little things, it's because they don't feel understood. They don't feel seen, and they don't feel appreciated. And the more that you focus back on the little things, the more you don't open your tunnel vision to the bigger picture, the more you resist seeking to understand, the more you get caught up in how you feel about it, the louder the other person's gonna get, and the harder they're gonna try to get you to understand. They're gonna start grasping for all these little things and all these little things they get upset about to show you more evidence of trying to help you see what they're trying to tell you. So it's sometimes these people that make all these big things out of nothing, they're not crazy. They're not ridiculous people. They're just people that are desperate to be seen and understood and heard. And they're just trying to find ways. And the more they're not seen or understood or heard, the louder they get, the more irrational. And what really sucks is sometimes when we have and think about the chronic emotional stress of that, like constantly not feeling seen or heard or understood. And what really sucks is sometimes when we get mad at people, anger can be a healthy emotion. It can be an empowering emotion. But when we stay mad for so long, all of a sudden we're training our brain to identify this person as unsafe. We're training our brain to see them as dangerous. And all of a sudden the amygdala part of our brain, which is your fight or flight, it's the part of your brain that makes you react before you can have rational thought, because you don't have time to think about it. Your body's like, this is unsafe. There's a tiger, there's a bear, like you're about to fall off a building and die. Like, so your amygdala takes over, and it takes you out of that situation, and it causes you to react before you can think about it. So when we start getting in a place of negative inflammatory emotions with someone for so long, over time, more and more, we're unable to use our rational brain. Even if we intellectually understand it, even if we're like, I know I should forgive this person, or I know I shouldn't be upset about this, but I am. Like, it's like our brain and emotions take over and we can't even handle it. So like before you get to that point, it's good to manage your emotions the best you can before it gets out of your control and causes chronic inflammation. And like, ways to do that is to, listen to understand instead of listening to respond. It's when someone's making a big deal out of something, look back. What are their emotional goals? Oh, I forgot to even talk about that. So we get attached to all of this evidence, like all these things people said and circumstances and what we think and whatever. What's interesting about that is like the way our brains work. We have a part of our brain that they call like the storytelling part of our brain. And what happens there is, based on, our human like survival, our brain is seeking to survive. But part of that is seeking to find meaning and seeking to understand so that we know what's safe or where should we go, what should we do and whatever. But what happens is our brain has to finish a story. Like if there's something that doesn't make sense to us in a story, our brain will basically create and pull something out of nowhere just to piece together the puzzle so that we can understand and move on. So sometimes we really do create stories in our head that may not be reality, and we believe it. We believe it. It's so true to us, but it's not our fault. It's just our brain doing its job. So if you can feed your brain the right information, and by right information, I mean the information that's going to empower you and make you feel how you want to feel, help you be in alignment with your emotional goals. So by reading, by seeking to understand, by finding, trying to understand why someone is saying what they are and why they are the way they are, you're going to get some information that may help you put together the puzzle in a more realistic way, instead of just like figuring out all on your own and connecting the dots in ways that maybe aren't the way the person meant it. But going back to emotional goals. So we all do it. We want to be right. We want to get justice. We want people to get what they deserve, including ourselves. So sometimes we get caught up in that. And that is not always in alignment with what our emotional goals truly are. Sometimes we think if we end up getting justice or being right, that we're going to meet an emotional goal we have. And we start focusing so much on that instead of looking at our emotional goal. Sometimes we don't even know what our emotional goals are. That's something that we started, my Inner Circle private membership group, we started the year with like, recognize what your emotional goals are. Because if you can make decisions on a daily basis trying to achieve a goal instead of trying to achieve something else in hopes that it reaches your goal, like trying to achieve justice and being right and standing up for yourself. I'm not saying that that's not important, because standing up for yourself can reach an emotional goal. What I'm saying is let go of outcomes. Let go of how things should be and having laser focus on exactly what your life should look like, exactly how someone else should behave, and having so many expectations and depending, allowing your emotions to be based, allowing yourself to only feel the way you want to feel if you get the certain outcomes. If people behave the way that you think they should behave, when you have what you think you should have, when your health is where you think it should be. And then all of a sudden, we're not in control of our emotions at all, because these are all things you can't control. So all of a sudden, you are living in a victim mindset. You're letting, other people's circumstances, health conditions, run your life. And when you allow other things to run your life, then you're not in control of how you feel. And so making an emotional goal, understanding okay, why do I want this promotion? Why do I want to want this person to go on a date with me? Why this, why that? Peel back the layers, and what you'll find is your emotional goal. And then you need to look at your life and, your daily life and say, okay, is what I'm doing making me feel the way I want to feel? Because a lot of times what we're fighting for is the opposite. It's producing the opposite of emotion of what we actually are chasing. I've spoken about this before. Sometimes, just for example, when someone gets a chronic health condition, they're like, this health condition, it will not win. I will fight it. So the way you fight it is by continuing to work full time. In fact, I'm going to work harder because this is not going to take away from my life. I'm going to continue cooking dinner every night for my family. I'm going to continue going to the gym and killing myself, whatever it is. But what ends up happening is your health condition does win, because when you're trying to do all these things, what you're fighting for, the reason that you don't want your health condition to win is because you don't want to lose your quality of life. You don't want to lose your joy. So you're fighting to protect your quality of life and joy. But guess what? When you're beating yourself down, when you don't allow yourself to rest, when you start fighting your health condition, do you really feel peace, joy, and a great quality of life? You end up fighting, and you end up having behavior and doing things daily that are taking away the same thing you're trying to protect. So it's you need to look at your life and your choices and say, okay, is this really getting me my emotional goal? The other thing is when it comes to relationships and emotional stress because of relationships, sorry, I went off on a tangent. It's not only do you need to seek to understand other people, and that will help relieve you some of your emotional stress, not just assuming this or that, not just fighting back and being reactive, understanding, okay, this person is hurting me or they're frustrating me. Why are they behaving like this? What is the intention behind it? And then maybe just talk to them about it. But the other thing is it's our responsibility. When I say our responsibility, if you're not going to be a victim, if you are going to reach your emotional goals of happiness, peace, joy, then it is your responsibility to learn how to express yourself. Because if the way you're expressing yourself is not in alignment with your emotional goals, if the way you're communicating with your spouse, your kids, your boss is not making you feel the way that you wanted, often when we start communicating, when we start sharing, we have some kind of emotional goal. We have an intention. We have something that we're wanting to get out of that. And it can be as simple as I just need to get this off my chest. It can be as simple as just wanting to feel more peace and less agitation. Maybe you're not even maybe you just want to be understood. So you have to look at the way you're expressing yourself and ask, before you even share, ask yourself, what is my intention for sharing this? What is my intention? What am I trying to communicate to this other person? How am I wanting to make this other person feel? How am I wanting to feel? And, sometimes we want someone else to feel bad. Sometimes we want them to feel regret. But peel back the layer. Why? Because sometimes when we want someone to feel bad or feel regret, it's because really the bottom layer is we just want to feel loved. We just want to feel seen and understood. So peel back the layers there and then look at the way you're communicating and say, okay, is this communication is what I'm saying really making me feel the way that I want? Is it getting me what I want? And is it making the other person feel the way I want? And really, at the core, what you want the other person to feel is really, you just want them to see what you're, understand you and, be seen, really, at the core. So it's understanding and, yeah, it's been long enough. If this is like a topic that you're struggling with, just send me a message. I can send you the resources I have and the different things that you can try, because it is all part of like being aware of someone else's actions and behaviors, and being aware of like your own emotions and why they're coming up and why you're feeling them. And like that is preventative medicine. Like that is managing your symptoms and your flare-ups. Like it's important, and it is a skill, and some of us were born with more of it than others. Some of us had more opportunities to learn it better than others, but we can all learn it and practice it. It's just practicing emotional intelligence. So yeah, message me if this is like a topic you want to know more about, and see you later. Bye.